The Frisco skirt is so cute. I love the waistband as well as the button and buttonholes and all of the panel seams. But those components can make this skirt a little bit tricky to sew. So if you are a beginner, I suggest you follow this hack to make a really cute wraparound skirt with a gathered frill and a straight waistband. We will be eliminating the shaped waistband with elastic closure and opting for a wrap style secured by 2 snaps. Then we are going to measure and add a gathered ruffle at the bottom to give the skirt a little bit of flair. So I have my pieces cut out, and you can get this pattern for free while it's available, but if not, you can head over to Sew Daily to grab this pattern. And it has a bunch of different pieces to it, and you can ignore the front and back and side waistband pieces and just cut the skirt panel pieces. And you want to make sure you always look at the cut number. A lot of these are cut 1. And I like to cut them all right side up. My fabric here is a linen, so it's good on both sides. But if you have a fabric with one good side and one bad side, then make sure you cut all of these pieces right side up. And that's where you can have so much fun mixing different fabrics and prints together. But I'm gonna call this my sunshine skirt because it's nice and bright and yellow, and the gathered ruffle will look so good. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just gonna pin all my panel pieces together first. So I'm going to lay them out. This is what I like to do when there's lots of panels. I just like to lay them out. So here we have the right front panel, we have the center front panel, and then we have the left front panel. So this will go like this, and these will be sewn together. So these edges don't get sewn together, so I'll leave that out for now. And we'll take these pins out. I always like to leave the pattern pieces attached to the fabric as long as I need to before pinning. So I'm going to take this, right sides together, and I'm just going to put a little piece of tape on here just so I know that this is the front, because things can start looking a little bit like one another when you get all these together. So this is the front right panel, and then I'm going to grab the back side panel, and this is the side seam with the size lines. So I'm going to want to the right side like that. So just walk your way around the entire skirt, pinning those edges together. So we have the side seam here. Now let's shift over, and now it's the center back panel. Now I can do this other back side panel. The trick to efficient and fast sewing is do as much pinning as you can as possible, and then go sit at your sewing machine and do all of those seams. Instead of pinning one seam, going, sewing, pressing, you batch sew as many seams as you can, then you can press them all at the same time. Just a little efficient sewing tip. So now we have the other side seam here, and then we grab our last left front panel because it wraps all the way around. And if you get confused with these pieces, just remember these side panel pieces that have the size lines, those are your side seams. You can kind of see once it sews together, it wraps around like that, and we'll just do a straight waistband on the top and a ruffle on the bottom. But before I measure these distances to cut my rectangles, I'm going to sew all of my panel seams together first, finish the allowances together, and then press them to one side. And what I've also done on both of my front edges is finish that front edge, press it 1.5 inches to the wrong side, and then top stitch it down in place. So you'll see where we're at now. This goes in like that. This goes over like that. So we can take this piece of tape off because we know that this is the front. They're all sewn together. So we have these two edges finished. So now what we are going to do, and again, I like to do this when I'm at this point of sewing, is we're gonna measure the waist line, and we are going to cut a rectangle. That measurement plus 1 inch for seam allowances on these edges, and then about 3 to 3.5 inches wide. So mine is 41. Now this should be larger than your waist because we have that wrap style. So I'm gonna cut mine 42 inches by 3 inches. And now while I have my excess fabric and my cutting supplies out, I'm gonna cut that bottom frill. So we want about a 2-to-1 gather ratio. So I'm gonna measure now the whole bottom edge of my skirt, and then I'm going to double the width of it. So we'll get that nice 2-to-1 ratio gathering along the bottom. Start measuring here. And this does not need to be perfect since it's all gathered in anyway. I'm just going to walk my tape measure around. It looked like my my tape measure ran out of measuring. So what I can do is just add. So we are about at 64 inches. So we're going to double 64. So I'm going to cut my frill piece 128 inches long by 6 inches wide. And you can pick whatever width you want for your ruffle to be. You could do a small ruffle, you could do even a bigger long tiered ruffle. And since some fabrics don't come that wide, what you can also do is divide that by 2, so you can even cut out 2 pieces that are each 64 inches long, and then you'll just have a seam in your ruffle, which is totally fine too. So let me cut out my ruffle. What I'm just going to do, because it's close enough, I'm just going to cut 2 6-inch wide panels the width of my fabric. It just makes it easy. But if you want more gathers, you can cut another panel, but this will still have a really nice gathering amount. So I have my ruffle here, and what I just did quickly at my sewing machine is stitched the panels together, right sides together, and I press them open. And I like to do this for gathered pieces because there is extra bulk involved. Then I also finished the front edges because the front edge of our skirts are already finished too. So I just did a little double turn press and top stitched. And then I ran 2 basting stitches along the top of my ruffle, and I just serge finish the bottom for now before I hem it, just to prevent future fraying as I gather it in. So now I'm going to pin my ruffle and gather it into the bottom of my skirt. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to notch the center of my skirt along the hemline, and this might not necessarily be in the center back, just so I have an even gathering. So I'm just going to notch into here, and that is where I'm going to put my center seam of my ruffle. Then I'm just going to work my way over here and pin these edges together. And then the same for the other side. And now I pull my bobbin threads until the frill edge matches the skirt hem length. I always like to work from one edge to the center, and then once that's gathered, I move on to the other side and gather it in. So now the ruffle, or the frill, the Frisco Frill as I like to call it, is ready to be sewn into the hem. But as I said earlier, the more pinning and prepping that you can do before you go to your sewing machine, the more efficient you'll be. So now I'm going to pre-press the waistband before I pin it onto my skirt. So I have my waistband here, and I'm just first going to press it in half, wrong sides together. And you can add a little bit of interfacing to this waistband piece if you like. Now I'm going to open it and then press up my seam allowance on one long edge. So now I'm going to pin my waistband to the waistline of my skirt with my seam allowance amount extending past that finished front edge. You can already see it coming together so nicely. So now I'm going to head over to my sewing machine and stitch my frill to the hem of my skirt, as well as the unpressed waistband edge. I'm going to stitch that all together. So once the waistband is sewn, we need to finish up this top edge. So what we're going to do is we are going to pin our waistband right sides together. And we are just going to stitch right there. And do that for both sides. So after I stitched on my waistband and I stitched on my frill, I went ahead and serged all of the allowances together on my frill. And what I'm going to do is I have this serger tail, so I'm going to wrap it in the edge and I'm going to flip it up and I'm going to top stitch it in place from the right side. So on this side, I like to cut my serger tail to about like an inch or so. Then I wrap it in and lay it up, and that gets caught in that top stitch. So I can even go ahead and just give this a light press up all the way around. And now at that waistband where we stitch that little seam, I'm just going to grade that seam allowance slightly and then clip into that corner. So once you trim that up, just flip it to the right side and then use a point turner and then just poke that corner slightly. And on the wrong side, what you're going to do is cover that waistline seam allowance with that pressed edge of the waistband. And then I'm just going to pin it together so it's nice and concealed on the right and wrong side. So again, on this waistband side, I am doing that same clipping. And while I'm at my pressing station too, I am going to press the hem allowance of my ruffle. Now I'm going to do a double press and turn. So I'm going to turn my serged edge once, and then one more time, because since it's so gathered, you could notice a serged edge stitch from the right side of the garment. So I want a nice clean finish from the wrong side. So I am just going to work my way around my hem and pin it, and then when I get to my sewing machine, I can do 3 top stitches. I can top stitch all the way around my waistband, so I'm securing that edge, and then I can also do the top stitch to hold my gathering seam flat, as well as all of my hem stitching. So I'm going to finish up my hem pressing, and then we'll have one more session at the sewing machine to finish this up. All right, so your skirt should just look like one long piece with the straight waistband all top stitched, as well as the ruffle seam top stitched and the hem finished as well. Now this is my favorite part. It's when we get to try it on a little bit. So I just find the center back panel, and I'm just going to wrap it around my body. And then you can use a pin marking to note where that overlap is, so you know where to install your snap. So I am just going to pin mark it like so, right here. So now I know when this gets sewn like that. So where that pin marking, that's where you can hand sew a snap to secure it in place, or you can install a buttonhole and a button. You could use a piece of Velcro, or you could also do a little snap like this with a tool like this. There is just so many options for a closure that you can do that is in your comfortable sewing range. An easy one to do is just a little snap or whatever you like. So that is all, really. You just wrap it up, and I also like to do a small snap right here, so you have 2 points of connection to make it nice and secure. But I love how the panels play. You have all the seaming. This looks so good in all different colors. What's glaring at me right now is I think I want to add some embroidery up this panel or something, or add some decorative stitches, or just leave it as is. But we have this beautiful wrap style, and we use the Frisco skirt without the French seams, without that shaped waistband and elastic, and without marking and installing all of those buttons and buttonholes. So it's just an easy and different approach to our fabulous Frisco skirt pattern, and I want to see all of your Frisco frills, so make sure to share them and tag us on social media. And thanks for watching Sew Daily Network. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, so you'll never miss another hack or another video or anything fun that we post. We'll see you later. Bye.